Nike's known for a lot of things, but high quality material in their footwear is not one of them, especially with their super long tenured staple of their footwear line, the Dunks. So when I heard rumblings and rumors that Walmart was selling a Dunk lookalike for a fraction of the cost, it had me intrigued because I could see Walmart actually making a fairly comparable shoe for a fraction of the price after we saw them make some pretty decent work boots. So we're gonna cut these things in half, run them through our test to really see if Walmart for $21 makes a better Dunk than Nike. So what are the contenders for the Dunk Slayers? Well, the brand is FUBU, and if you didn't know, FUBU is an American hip hop apparel company that was pretty popular back in the day. FUBU stands for For You By Us and was created by Damon John, who you might recognize from Shark Tank. And back in the day, it was not a Walmart brand, but it's one of these brands that's fallen from the grace that it did have to now being a Walmart brand, which is part of why I'm like, maybe it's a decent shoe. The style of this FUBU is the men's icon low top sneaker. They weigh 14.8 ounces. They retail for $21 compared to the $115 retail for Dunks. Not even talking about how much people were paying for resale Dunks. And these FUBUs and the Nikes are made in China. And the way that they position this product from the website is the men's icon sneaker from FUBU combines the classic basketball vibe of the late 80s and the mid 90s with modern streetwear style. Designed with a low cut padded collar, lace up closure, a cushioned foam footbed, and a durable outsole, they are the perfect sneaker for everyday activities. And if you want a pair of these or these, check them out via the link in my description. This might be the coolest ad of all time because Demko sponsored this video, and instead of rambling off a bunch of random stuff, they just sent me a box of cool knives to unbox and show you some of the details and features, a little bit about the brand, but more importantly, I'm just gonna unbox a bunch of cool knives to show you guys. Okay, let's start smallest to biggest. Oh, the little teeny baby knife with the sheath. Love that. Okay, next to the plastic case knives. All right, what do we have here? It's basically the same one I carry, but with a different blade on it. Next. Ooh. Material is gray gravois. Next. Ooh, titanium's cool. Titanium is one of the strongest and lightest metals out there. Still pretty heavy though. And I like this titanium handle, that's cool. And the blade's thicker too. That's where some of the weight comes from. Next. Weird, this is a weird material. It's like kind of translucent. Now, onto the big boys. Wow, that is cool. I love the sheath that these come with. Next. So same handle color. Let's see if the blade's different. Ooh, I believe this has to be the spear. That's cool. I don't know if I've ever had a knife that was a spear shape. Ooh, blacked out. I like that. So let's see what blade this is. That is so cool. It's like a little samurai sword. I want this for me. Yes, these are so cool. That is a pretty satisfying unboxing for an ad. So if you're obsessed with knives or you're looking for a new camp knife, a new little pocket knife, or even just a little baby knife, Demko seems to be a really cool option. They've got a good name in the industry. And if you want one of these knives, you can get 15% off your order with the code ROSE15 at checkout. And thanks again to Demko Knives for sponsoring this video and sending us all these cool knives to be able to give out to all the employees so we can be rocking some killer knives in the shop. So thanks again to Demko. So now let's start comparing the materials on these to really see what's what. Because if you remember with the Nike Dunks, this leather it's leather, but it's not great leather. It's just got a really heavy pigment and basically a plastic layer on top that kind of melts off and flakes off when you burn it. And there's also all these panels that are fake leather, as you can see here from that burn test that we did. But the leather does have the grain, which is that higher quality, stronger portion of the top of the cross section rather than just a really cheap coated suede like sometimes we see from New Balance. The leather on the Dunks is 1.5 to 1.7 millimeters thick. So if you compare that to the Walmart FUBUs, is this even leather? Well, we put it on the lighter. Every single panel of this is fake leather, which isn't too big of a surprise for $21, but I was still holding out a little bit of hope because it is a pretty convincing fake leather. You know, it's definitely not the worst fake leather we've seen. It has that appearance of leather. It has kind of that same feel to it, but the problem with fake leather, it's not as durable. It's going to delaminate, and especially in the sneaker world where they're so concerned about creases, fake leather creases basically immediately. From the first time you look at it, it creases. The thickness of the FUBU material is 2.5 millimeters thick. We ran the puncture test on both of them with pretty surprising results because the Dunks took 120 pounds, but the FUBUs took 124. And sometimes the fake leathers perform really well in the puncture test because they have such a fibrous structure underneath. It takes a lot of pressure to puncture through. So that's one thing you can't really dock about some fake leathers is they are quite puncture resistant sometimes, on occasion. So out of the two of them, which has the better upper material? Clearly the Nikes do. Leather's gonna outperform a really cheap fake leather basically any day on everything except for a rare puncture test result. But what about the insides where I could really see these being comparable? Well, the Nikes, if you remember, just have a typical fabric lining and two different types of materials. Compare that to the Fubus, and the Fubus, they basically have the exact same lining materials. They look identical. They're basically the same patterns, same thicknesses, even down to the inner lining being a different material. Very, very similar. But even if we pull out the insoles are comparable because Nike is notorious for putting cheap insoles in the majority of their footwear, as you can see from just this cheap open cell foam insole compared to the Fubu, which is not as removable. Still have to kind of peel it off the fiberboard underneath. Still an open cell foam. I would still say the Nike is better, but marginally better. Maybe. And then underneath, you can see just a typical Nike lasting material compared to the really cheap fiberboard that they put in these Fubus. So is there a significant difference between the insides of these two shoes? Well, not really with the lining and not with the insole. The lasting board is different, but that's not even that different when it comes to durability and longevity. It's more of how it's used and what's underneath of it. Because if you look at the construction of these two shoes, the Nikes are pretty well built because you've got a true sidewall stitch on the cup sole. The cup sole is also cemented and the lasting material is strobel stitched to the upper as well. Compare that to the Fubus where you've got a fake sidewall stitch on a cup sole that is cemented. So that if that glue fells right here in the corner or any high wear spot, you don't have any thread backing it up. And it's also not strobel stitched. So if you start blowing the side of these shoes out, you wear them for a really long time, that lasting material could come up. So obviously the Nike is better out of the two. And then really the last component we haven't talked about is the midsole, because we know from the cut in half of the Dunks that it's a cup sole with a foam midsole. And then just feeling the Fubus, I can feel there's a bunch of cavities, which is backed up by the bar drop test where the Nike Dunks bounce up 6.8 inches and the Fubus only bounce up 4.6 inches. Even with the puncture test, the Dunks took 60 pounds versus the Fubus took 36 pounds. And then finally the outsoles. Obviously the Fubus are inspired by the Dunks, but different patterns, different densities or hardnesses, because the Fubus come in at a 60 Shore A, whereas the Dunks come in at a 75 Shore A. But that 60 Shore A comes from an outside measurement, not from the inside. So we'll see how soft it really is when we get cut in half, because it feels way softer. And once it's cut in half, I'll try to rip it apart to see how strong that glue actually is, since it's the only thing holding this whole shoe together. So let's cut them in half. All right, we got them cut in half. And if you're not subscribed, consider doing it. Just one little click to support us that allows us to cut apart brand new stuff every single week to show you what you're spending your hard-earned money on, for better or for worse. So let's see what's inside. How soft is this outsole actually now that we have it cut in half? Comes in at a 38 Shore A. Because if you look really closely at the cross section, you can see there's little air bubbles all throughout this entire rubber outsole. Because typically this thin and this type of outsole would be a solid rubber. And that's why in the Dunks it's a harder rubber and it's solid all the way through, versus a cheaper rubber. They fill it full of air to make it softer and to reduce the cost and the material usage, but it kind of balls up and starts falling apart. So the durability of the outsole, not looking great. And we called it pretty spot on. You can see all these cavities all throughout the sole construction, where the Dunks have a layer of foam all the way through. And not every cavity is always bad, but in certain instances like this, where you've got a really thin insole and an even thinner lasting board, that's gonna overcompress over time, and you're gonna start feeling the high spots and low spots throughout this sole construction. But with this big of voids combined with the lack of support on top of the voids is not an optimal design for comfort and longevity, especially with the crumbliness of the outsole. And since it's fully reliant on glue to hold this shoe together, let's do a little rip test and see if I can get it to just rip apart. Sometimes these are really hard to rip, other times they're really easy. Maybe we should start with the lasting board first. Not great. I'll give you guys the sound. That's why you want a strobel stitch. What about the rest? It's only glued over maybe a centimeter, a quarter inch of material, but it seems like it's glued fairly well. It's not just immediately coming off like the blasting board. I have to stand up. So that quarter of an inch that it's glued is glued pretty well. But once you have it loosened up and you've got a little bit of a tear going, it just comes unraveled pretty easily. Good sound. So, not great. So that's a huge part of why having that redundant stitching throughout the shoe is important for the longevity and the structure of the shoe. Because now you can see if that glue fails, all the main components are just glued together. So are these $21 FUBUs better than Nike Dunks? No, not even close. They're made of fake leather. They don't have the Strobel stitch, the sidewall stitch. Their outsole's pretty terrible. The midsole is non-existent, just voids without any structure on top to support the squish. So are they worth at least $21, which you can get them for at Walmart? I think they're worth 21 bucks. It seems like a pretty fair price. We've seen a lot worse shoes in this really, really affordable range, but we haven't really seen anything a lot better. So for 21 bucks, that's about what they're worth to me. But not everybody can afford the real deal. So for some people in certain situations, they could find value in a $21 pair of knockoff Dunks. But realistically, you're a lot better off going to a secondhand store or saving up a little bit more money to get the real deal, because in the long run, you might be saving money by buying a little bit better, more durable and longer lasting pair of shoes rather than a pair of shoes that could wear out in a month. But keep in mind, one of the biggest things with this whole sneaker thing is the name brand and the classic silhouette. And no matter the price, even if this was a $1 sneaker, a lot of people are not going to be caught dead in a pair of these compared to a pair of real Dunks. So ultimately, not nearly as bad as I thought for the Walmart FUBU knockoffs. And we know that Walmart can make an okay boot. And so I'm really curious if there's any shoes that they make that are actually decent quality, or if they're all kind of this bottom of the barrel $20 cheap as you can make footwear while still technically being footwear, because I want to revisit their boots. I want to do some of their other knockoffs. So if you like this video, support it by liking, subscribing, and checking out our handmade leather goods, because I want to revisit this Walmart line, and what we do is based off of what you guys watch and what you like. So support it if you want to see more. So thank you guys. See ya. Okay, I see what I say. Foam. Having this big a